one topic dominates on media day ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix as questions fly in for all drivers on the unexpected driver swap of Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. Elsewhere, Lewis Hamilton hits back at a claim that he is losing faith in Ferrari, whilst Lando Norris deals a statement of his own. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks. Ian, another F1 Thursday, another media day, looking ahead to the Japanese Grand Prix, and well, we thought it was going to be a good one. We were not disappointed, unsurprisingly, of course. The main talking point for pretty much every single driver, although most drivers opted not to comment, was of course on this driver swap of Liam back to Racing Bulls, Yuki being promoted to Red Bull. And let's kick things off, though, with Liam, the driver who has been demoted. And very interesting comments from him. I felt bad from the press conference today because pretty much every single question from the floor was understandably directed at him. I thought, though, he held himself really, really well. But what was also fascinating is that he gave a little bit of a timeline of how everything unravelled. He, despite rumours, didn't know nothing during the Chinese Grand Prix itself. It was only till he got a phone call a couple of days after, well, where he discovered his fate.
Yeah, he had Pierre Gasly and George Russell sat alongside him in that portion of the press conference. And as you say, Nick, pretty much every question, once it was directed to the written media, was directed towards Liam, was directed Liam's way. So, as you say, unsurprising in all fairness, bearing in mind he and Yuki Tsunoda had been the main topic, pretty much the only topic of conversation in the days that followed what occurred with regard to that meeting, of course, that took place in Dubai, as we all know, between Christian Horner, the Red Bull team principal, Helmut Marko, the Red Bull advisor, Chilomir Vidia, Red Bull's majority shareholder, and other members of the senior board management within Red Bull. It was made clear that Christian was not the only one that made that call. It was all those gentlemen put together that had decided to take this, what can only be described as brutal, drastic course of action to demote Liam after just 2 Grand Prix, regardless of his performances over those two races, not even bothering to give him the opportunity of this Japanese Grand Prix, a circuit which he knows well. He'd raced on it 3 times in 2023, twice in Super Formula, once in that year's Japanese Grand Prix, of course, when he'd replaced Daniel Ricciardo. So, as you say, all the questions directed towards Liam's way. He'd departed China naturally disappointed, but completely unaware of the discussions that had quite obviously started in the background at that stage, carried over into this meeting in Dubai. And then, of course, the very first he knew about it, according to what he has told us, is that phone call was, bye-bye, Liam. Thank you ever so much for your 2 Grand Prix. You're going to be demoted back to Racing Bulls for the rest of this season. We're promoting Yuki. So, yeah, quite a sad state of affairs for Liam. But now all he can do is pick himself up, dust himself down, and get back on with this opportunity that he has been afforded at Racing Bulls, because it's not the end. It's not the very end, as we've discussed previously in our updates, Nick. As I say, if Red Bull really wanted to make a statement, they could have turfed him out completely. They haven't. They're giving him this second chance, shall we say, at Racing Bulls. And who knows, maybe somewhere down the line, there may just be another second chance with Red Bull. But of course, it's going to take a considerable set of circumstances for that to happen. Liam needs to get a considerable amount more experience under his belt, and he has to prove that he has got what it takes to help develop a car, in particular when it's a car that is as difficult to drive as we know that RB21 is this season.
If he were to be demoted and then promoted again further down the line, I'm pretty sure he'd be the first Red Bull driver that has happened to, but I guess he needs to be promoted, though, again, for that to happen. But obviously, in F1, one driver's loss is another driver's gain. And in that case, that gain is for Yuki Tsunoda being in the Red Bull at his home race in a special livery, which obviously recognises Honda and the Japanese flag, obviously being red and white. And I mean, Yuki, quite clearly, loving life, has obviously received a text from Sergio Perez, of all people. But it's fair to say, though, he's not expecting much help from his 4-time world champion teammate.
No, it was a really good question during that FIA press conference, actually. And he was asked whether he'd actually gone to Max so far, if he'd contacted him at all, and just asked him for any advice, and he said no, that hadn't happened. And then the key line that followed was, even if I tapped him on the shoulder, I don't think he'd turn around and give me any advice. So that was kind of telling in itself. And then what followed was when Max Verstappen did his written media session, and Max was asked, of course, about the Liam situation, and we're going to get on to that in a second, but basically refusing to offer any insight. And then specifically with regard to Yuki, he basically turned around and said, well, he's got to figure things out for himself. So I'm kind of wondering, is this a sign of things to come between these two? Is it, they're quite clearly already no love lost between them, that actually they don't have too good of a relationship? And I'm also now wondering, is this the reason why Yuki has never actually been promoted in the first place? Why he has had to wait this long? Because maybe his relationship with Max isn't a good one from the outset. If these two are saying if these two are saying these things about one another already, and have not even gotten to the car yet and started going around the Suzuka circuit, then is this a sign of things to come as what we can expect over the course of the rest of this season between Yuki and Max? So maybe that's why they thought Red Bull, that's why they thought Liam would be the better fit, because they kind of figured he might be somebody that could get along with Max, even if his car development might be lacking in the initial stages. Well, unfortunately, it's pretty evident from some of the comments that we've read from both Helmut Marko and Christian Horner at recent days that Liam's feedback, shall we say, was kind of lacking. And when you've got a car that, as I've mentioned, is as difficult to drive as this RB21 clearly is, suffering with its balance issues, making it difficult through the corners, both going into and out of at various stages, then you need a driver that can at least offer a reasonable amount of feedback. Now, of course, yes, they ditched Sergio Perez because they found that he couldn't develop that car the way they wanted. They kind of hoped that Liam might be the stopgap in between. Well, unfortunately, he's proved a very short stopgap, just these two Grand Prix. Now they've brought in Yuki Tsunoda. He does, of course, have 4 years of experience within the Red Bull family. He has said himself, of course, that what he's experienced in the simulator so far has been no dramas, as far as he's concerned. He repeated that again today in the FIA press conference, that the simulator has been fine for him so far. But could it be a case that the Red Bull simulator and what the readings that they're getting out of it is completely different to what they're getting from the car itself? We will only know once Yuki has had those first couple of practice sessions on Friday at Suzuka, and has been able then to offer a little bit more considered feedback as to how that car feels compared to what he's been experiencing over time within the Red Bull simulator.
Well,
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. My favourite saying this
Your
year. And I
favourite
mean,
saying, mate.
that
That's why I
that
use
time is. I thank you. That time is literally 24 hours time, because this time tomorrow we'll know how it went for Yuki. But one thing that's really interesting about this whole driver swap is today in media day. Of course, Liam and Yuki both discussed it in great depth for obvious reasons. Isaac Hadjar, not to the same extent, but also addressed it to a decent amount, saying that it's effectively so obvious, were his words, so obvious and so clear, how you can get promoted at Red Bull to be alongside Max. Simply perform well and you'll be rewarded. If you struggle and don't deliver the results, you'll be demoted. Simple as that. The person who really spoke about it the least was Max Verstappen, and the word that comes to mind for me is he was a little bit cryptic, I feel like is the way to put it, because obviously, and I'll explain my point, and then fair enough, you can offer your, the reason for it is, and again, it could be the wrong word, is that again was quite quick to not answer a lot of questions, apart from one in regards to obviously the Instagram post he liked from Guido van der Garde, which was really slamming Red Bull for bullying Liam, was one of the words in it. And Max came out in regards, because he was asked about that Instagram post and the fact he liked it, and despite having not really answered any of the previous questions, gave a pretty damning line on that one.
Which is why I don't think he's cryptic, because he pretty much said all he had to say in the space of about 3 questions. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, Nick, don't worry.
I
But
take it back.
yeah,
So,
no, all good, mate, all good. But he pretty much
yeah,
said all he had to say in the space of about 3 questions and 3 answers, because his responses were, well, as far as I'm concerned, I've discussed it inside Red Bull and I
yeah,
made my feelings clear to them. And obviously, yes, he refused to expand on what those feelings were, what his reaction to Christian Horner and Helmut Marko had been. He wanted to keep it in-house on this occasion, but then somebody, thankfully, asked him about his like of the Guido van der Garde post, where he, as you rightly said, Nick, he was quite damning. Basically, he turned around
yeah,
and saying that what Red Bull had done, they crushed Liam's spirit, that it was effectively a panic move, that moreover, it was bullying in many respects. And Max had liked that. So Max was then asked about his liking of that we got a Guido van der Garde post, and basically he said, well, pretty much said all I needed to with my liking of that. It was not a mistake, were his additional words, because obviously somebody might have just hit the like button on his behalf, but no, it was definitely, Max assured us, him that hit that like button. And I think all that Guido said was all that Max was feeling
yeah.
and all that he didn't say today, which he decided to keep locked inside on this occasion. But we got the general gist. He's not happy with what Red Bull has done. He quite clearly believes that Liam should have been given an extended chance, whether it be this one Grand Prix, whether it be this triple header, because of course this Japanese Grand Prix is the start of a three-way flyaway with Bahrain and Saudi Arabia following swiftly on the back of it. But we've got Max's thoughts. He's not happy. And as I say, is that anything to do as well with this perceived early degree of animosity between himself and Yuki? Very strange comments between the two of them, I thought. Yuki in the press conference and Max then following up in his own media session. So very unusual. As I say,
Who,
watch this space. Let's see what unfolds from this. But Red Bull's got a lot of
yeah.
work to do with it. Sorry, Nick. Red Bull's got a lot
That's
of
right.
work to do with the RB21, that's for sure.
Who would have social media? Hey, and I take back the word cryptic. Maybe I was a bit unfair, but thank you. I think that's perfectly explained your point, Ian. But let's move on away from the Red Bull drama, because it feels like all we've discussed for the past, well, since China, basically. Let's discuss Lando Norris, because he came out with an interesting statement of his own and effectively saying that at the moment, McLaren are the only team on the grid with two good drivers. I think that Ferrari have quite a good driver pairing in Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. You know, Mercedes isn't too bad. It's a pretty punchy line from Lando.
Yeah, he did expand on that. Thankfully, somebody did follow up with a question
He saved
with
himself.
with regard to Ferrari, because obviously you look at Ferrari, you kind of understood what he was
Yeah,
initially referring to, in that Mercedes, okay, it's got George Russell, been there a good few years now, of course, but it's got a rookie in Kimi Antonelli, still developing, still learning, and will be doing so throughout the course of this season. Then we have Red Bull, very similar situation. Red Bull, Max Verstappen, of course, hugely experienced, 4-time champion. He now is nurturing, or certainly was for those two Grand Prix in Australia and China, was nurturing a rookie teammate alongside him in Liam Lawson. He's also now got a new teammate who's going to be having to get up to speed with the Red Bull, with that car in Yuki Tsunoda. And then, of course, you're kind of left scratching your head thinking, but hold on, we've got Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari. That is arguably, as Lewis put it, one of the best pairings in F1 history.
yeah, they're quite good.
They're pretty good. Thankfully, as I say, somebody did come back to Lando and said, just to clarify that, Lando, you've got Lewis at Ferrari and Charles at Ferrari. Are you sure? And what Lando was referring to, he did clear this up. He feels that, and as Lewis has pretty much discussed himself, with Lewis going to Ferrari, yes, he's a 7-time F1 champion, 100+ Grand Prix winner, as we all know, but he's still, as Lewis has referred to on occasions himself, getting up to speed with A, the team as a whole, and B, the car in general, trying to find out what works for him, what doesn't work, what he needs in terms of the feedback with his engineer, of course, because that's still a new relationship. So as far as Lando is concerned, he and Oscar are now in the 3rd year of their relationship. So effectively, it is the most experienced pairing in terms of within one team.
Yeah.
compared to the other three teams at Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari. So he feels that they know each other well. They know each other, what they like, what they dislike in terms of how they like each other's cars, how each other goes about their setup, their preferences, and that kind of stuff. How they can align together when it comes to what's required with any team orders. We saw what happened at the end of last season. Didn't quite work well on occasion. Eventually, it evolved over the course of time once Andreas Stella, especially, and Zach Brown, of course, made sure as to how they should go about those team orders. And I'm sure at some stages this season, given the positions that these two guys are going to be in, that there might have to be a degree of team order come into play. We already saw a little smidgen of it, of course, in the Australian Grand Prix when they were told to hold station during that bad weather phase just to see how things were going to play out. They didn't want any attacking of one another just in case it led to something untoward happening with one or both cars, of course. So as Lando managed to expand upon, and as I'm explaining here, it is that experience of the two of them within the one team as to why he feels they are the best pairing on the grid right now compared to Red Bull, which has an experienced driver and a rookie, or it did have, or it has a new driver now coming in Yuki, and Mercedes, where it has an experienced driver and a rookie, and Ferrari, of course, where it has two hugely experienced drivers, but one of those getting up to speed with everything that he needs to know about Ferrari and the car.
Yeah, it's a point that makes a lot of sense. And I think you mentioned their bad weather. We're not going to discuss that today because we need to give it a couple of days.
We might get some. Might.
There's a few, depending on where you look, but we'll discuss that nearer the time because I don't think my mind can handle that at the moment. Final talking point, though, is Lewis Hamilton, because it's been a very up and down start to his career at Ferrari. Australia was a strategic nightmare by the team. Then going into China, where he won the sprint race pretty comfortably before then being disqualified in the race, but had pretty bad pace in that race in general. It's been very up and down. Some have claimed that he's already losing faith in Ferrari, something which Lewis turned around and called complete rubbish, said he still has 100% faith in the team, but most importantly, how he's actually been really impressed by Ferrari's reaction to the double disqualification, and that actually they've taken a lot of lessons from it. Pretty positive.
It's amazing what some so-called pundits decide to come out with after just a couple of Grand Prix to already suggest that Lewis has lost faith with Ferrari. I mean, what an absolute load of utter hogwash that kind of comment is. I mean, it's two Grand Prix. As you say, he's experienced a high and a couple of lows. Two of them, one of them in particular, of course, the disqualification from China, really damaging, quite a low, not confidence sapping, because of course it wasn't his fault, nothing to do with him. It was the way the team had got the car set up. But nevertheless, as you pointed out, Nick, he's come out today. He's fully supported Ferrari, as you would expect him to do, quite naturally. He's not going to turn around and criticize the team, but this is a hugely experienced Ferrari team. It's now in its third year under its team principal, Fred Vasseur, a man he knows extremely well and was one of the reasons why Lewis decided to join Ferrari, because of that relationship that he's had with Fred over the years. So the whole dynamic within Ferrari has changed, of course, with Lewis's arrival. It's going to require new processes to be put in place, new procedures, different ways of working, everybody needing to become accustomed to one another. And this is simply what's taking place over the course of these first few Grand Prix right now. And I'm sure once we get through the other side of this triple header, that relationship, that bond will have developed to such an extent that Lewis will feel really quite comfortable in Ferrari, and they will feel relatively comfortable around Lewis and what he requires and what he's looking for going forward to ensure that they can build on the success of the sprint race in China and put behind them what occurred with the tactical mess, as you said, in Australia, and the technical mess, shall we say, with regard to the double DSQ in China as well. So it's, as I say, a real roller coaster so far for Ferrari and Lewis. But to say he's lost faith, sheer nonsense.
And I think that's a pretty nice note to end on. Ian, amazing stuff as always. For those who've been watching, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to join us post Friday for our post Friday F1 update to see how Yuki Tsunoda got on his first day as a full-time Red Bull driver. Well, at least full-time for now. Good luck, Yuki, and good luck, Liam, as well. Hopefully it goes well. From myself and Ian, we will see you on Friday. See you later.
Take care as always, folks.